Writers Talk. I'm Leslie Goodwin from the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University. I'm here with Ryan Key, singer and guitarist for the band Yellowcard. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Yellowcard is an alternative rock, pop-punk band that includes a violin, which is very unique to this genre and very characteristic of the band's sound. Yellowcard has released 7 full-length albums over the past 10 plus years and has most recently released the long-awaited When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes on March 22nd of this year. When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes has done really well so far, still appearing in the top 200 albums list on iTunes this week, and also still in the top 20 or 30, I think, on the alternative albums list on iTunes. But that's just some of the quantitative feedback on the album. But how does it feel to, be a touring musician again and be interacting with the fans and stuff? How's that?
Well, the one thing that I missed the most during the time we were away from the band over the last 3 years was touring. I was still writing a lot of music, which actually is what led us to finding our new bass player, Sean O'Donnell. He and I have been friends for a lot of years, and we were actually in our first 2 little punk bands and vans when we were 19, touring together.
Wow.
That's when we met, and then reconnected 4 or 5 years later when I was in Yellowcard, and he was in another band. Either way, we were writing a lot of music, so that part is something that I was still, exercising the muscle of writing songs, and the hard part was definitely being not on the road and not playing shows. That's really my favorite part of it.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to maybe the biggest, most pressing story for you guys is for 2 years you guys took just a step back from the band and went your separate ways and worked on your own things, like you said. You were still writing and working with Sean O'Donnell, your bass player. So what's a little more of the history leading up to the decision to just take that break from Yellowcard?
Well, after Ocean Avenue, we released Licensed Sounds, and at the beginning of that record the process, the cycle for that record, things were going really well, and they were really going where I think we wanted to go with that record. We definitely made a record that was very outside of the box and sounded pretty much nothing like Ocean Avenue. It was just a chapter, a phase of our life, and it was definitely a little darker within the band. We were going through some internal struggles, and everybody was kind of pulling away from each other, and I think that record was very descriptive of that. And I think we also wanted, at that time we were young and getting so much attention, I think we wanted to prove something. We wanted to prove something about our writing, that we could write more than a 3-chord pop song, and that was a lot of the driving force behind that record. And at the beginning, it was really working well, and then my vocal cords just died on me, and I had to have surgery, and it really, really stopped the train, while it was moving. So, Lights and Sound sort of became dead in the water at that point, and we decided to go back in the studio pretty quickly. We only took about a month off after the last Lights and Sounds tour before we started working on Paper Walls. And with Paper Walls, we really focused ourselves on making a record that sort of started to lead us back to the sound of the band that we discovered originally. I feel like we really were on our way to accomplishing that with that record, and we were really proud of it, and we were really excited to go out and work on it. And a lot of the executives at the record company were blowing a lot of smoke up our ass about how great the record was. Not that it wasn't a great record, but about all the opportunities we were going to have and all the things that were going to happen with the album. And then overnight, it seemed, the record came out in July. By December, the record company had pretty much just fallen apart around us, and there was nowhere to go, and nobody working the record. Nobody we knew still worked at the record company that had ever worked for us before. We were just exhausted at that point after all of that. There was still a lot of I think there were differences within the band that weren't really open and out on the table, that we had just kind of bottled up, and as you do when you're on tour with the same people for 8 years straight. And the decision was either, do we go right back in the studio again, like we just did, or step away from it for a while. And I think we all agreed that we were not going to be in a good creative place after all of that. We just decided the best thing would be to step away. And I absolutely do not regret 1 second of it, because when we decided to start talking about making a new record, there was a feeling of excitement and friendship in the band that had been missing for a long time. And I think all of that translated into When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes. And you know, the way we were able to write When You're Through Thinking was really amazing, because the first two records that everybody, there's a lot of press with this record saying we released 7 albums. There were 2 records in high school that I wasn't a part of, and I guess people are counting those. But the first 2 records that I made with the band, one for the kids and Ocean Avenue, we wrote so much of those records together, fully together. You know, I'll write a riff or a melody or something in my room by myself, bring it to the band, and then we work on it, and it becomes a song. Very rarely do I finish a whole song and bring it in. And there's 1 or 2 per record that I do, but those first couple records, we had a practice room. We still all lived together in the same, you know, in the same neighborhood. Even if 2 of us were in one apartment and 3 in another house, we were still really close to each other, and we were always writing. You know, if we were together hanging out, we were writing songs. And then Ocean Avenue blew up, and that never happened again. We would get together for 6 weeks in a rehearsal space in LA, and that would be then we'd start recording after we came up with the ideas. So When You're Through Thinking was the whole year. We had to do a lot of traveling to meet each other because we all live in different cities now. But we really made a conscious effort to spend the year together writing. And I think because of that, we were able to discover really what we were trying to find on Paper Walls. We really found that original Yellowcard sound, and it's because we wrote so much of the record together. It was just fun to do again, and I think that's the most important thing about it.
Yeah, definitely. With When You're Through Thinking, you worked with producer Neil Avron again, and I believe you worked with him on 4 other records, all
through Ocean Avenue, Lights and Sounds, Paper Walls.
Okay. How is that? How is it working with the same producer? Is that an advantage? I mean, of course it's an advantage, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But
yeah.
What is that?
People, you know, you always kind of entertain the idea for a second about maybe we should change it up, see what kind of results we get. But with our band, that conversation never lasts very long. We love Neil. He's like family. Treats us like family. You know, I mean, I've picked his kids up from school, you know, while he's been working on something and couldn't leave the studio. We're really close, and he has just taught us so much about ourselves as songwriters, and helped us grow and mature with every record. And he just understands the dynamic of the band. We're an interesting group of individuals to be in the same band together, and it's not always easy to keep us on the same page. And Neil, he really understands the best ways to work with each of us individually, so that collectively we're the best we can be in the studio. So I don't think as long as we can continue to afford to work with Neil Avron, I think we'll continue to do that for the rest of our career.
Very cool. So you touched on this a couple times, but for when you're writing these songs for Yellowcard, is it kind of more of a collective effort? Like you said, you would write a riff or a melody and take it to the band. Where do all the other ideas that eventually form into a song, do those all come from everyone in the band, or is it you and Ryan Mendez, or just a few of you, or what's the?
There's really just not a formula to it for us. I wrote a lot of music with Sean Mackin in Seattle at his house. I wrote a lot with O'Donnell in San Diego, and I wrote a lot with Ryan in Arizona. And I think it works a little bit like that. It's sort of me working with the guys, and in best case scenario, working with all of them at the same time. But See Me Smiling is a song on the new record that Ryan Mendez recorded, demoed the entire song musically, start to finish, and it's almost exactly the same on the record. He just had it, sent it to us, emailed it, and we were all like, yeah, why wouldn't, it's ripping, why would we not put that on the record? So I wrote words and melody, over the top of it. This record was cool for me because having O'Donnell in the band as another lyricist. I was a big fan of his band that he was a singer for. It was called Revolver, and he was the primary writer in that band. He wrote all the songs, and he's an incredible lyricist, and I've never had another lyricist in the band before, so it was really cool to have a little bit of that weight off of my shoulders and have someone I respect so much as a songwriter sort of helping me to bounce ideas off of and things like that. But a lot of our music is written and inspired by the music. We like, you know, to feel it, play it in a room, and give it the energy that comes with that, and then we work on the lyrics and stuff on top of the music. And then usually if you hear a song on a record that's kind of mid-tempo or acoustically driven, those songs are usually written on a guitar with the words and melodies, you know, kind of at one time. Those usually end up being more ballad or mid-tempo type songs, and then the faster rock songs we just kind of work on in the room and riff out until we find something that we love, you know.
Yeah. So, and you just touched on this, so there have been a few lineup changes to Yellowcard throughout the years, including Ryan Mendez joining in 2005, I believe, and then Sean O'Donnell just joining for this most recent album. How does the introduction of a new person, a new mind, a new personality into the band, how does that affect the songwriting of the band?
You know, I just try and keep kind of rolling forward with it, you know, so I don't really pick it apart too much as far as how am I going to write with this person. I just kind of, there they are, let's write music, you know. Ryan Mendez he's been in the band for a long time now, and I, you know, honestly don't really remember what it would be like without him. You know, he's a big part of the songwriting process. And Sean O'Donnell, I read in a review, it said that he brought a rhythmic muscularity that was different than our previous bass player's more compositional approach, which I think makes a lot of sense. He's kind of, I think Sean is, as a bass player, is laying more of a foundation and a less melodic approach to the bass guitar. I don't know, I think that's cool. I think it's really, you know, it's a different style for sure in our band, but it totally works.
Yeah.
I love the bass tracks on the new record. And I loved Pete's stuff too. You know, Pete was an incredible writer, and just Pete wanted to be a guitar player. And you could hear it in his bass playing, you know. He is a guitar player.
That's a good point, yeah.
He's a ripping guitar player. You know, and O'Donnell is a great guitar player too, but he's a rhythm guitar player like me, and I think you can hear that in his bass playing.
On this record, in an interview, I think Sean said it, that he, specifically on this record, Sean wrote all of the violin arrangements on all of the songs. Is that something that was different this time around, or has that kind of always been the way that you've approached the violin? And
I mean, I think there's been a couple of times where it was a guitar riff that we translated to the violin, but yeah, it was very similar to the way we've always approached the violin. I know that we made a real conscious effort to kind of make a violin-heavy record. It's something that, you know, fans of our band love, and we take a lot of pride in the fact that I feel like we do it well and we place it correctly, you know. And I mean, sure, it's something you're either gonna, honestly, I think it's something you love or hate. You know, you're either turned on by it and attracted to our band because of it, or it just bugs the shit out of you. You can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was fun to do on this record. We were trying to put it in the right places and really being conscious of where it was and what we're doing. Sean brings something awesome to the table in that he is a composer in a lot of ways. All the string arrangements, and this record, I think we had 3 songs with string arrangements on them, but Lights and Sounds, we had a full symphony orchestra. At one point there was actually like brass and woodwinds and timpani and the whole deal. And he had our 2 other primary string players that work with us on every record working with him on the writing, but he actually writes the music for those things. We don't hire some guy to come in and do our arrangements for us. And, you know, that's something that, again, is, you know, when you hear the band and you hear, you know, a 3-chord pop song, which we're good at writing those songs, it's, you don't necessarily know that there's that depth to the band.
Yeah.
Musically. And, you know, it blows my mind because, I don't know, I love writing songs and I love writing words, but I never had the patience to learn the music part of it because all I wanted to do was be a songwriter. I mean, when I bought my first guitar, I just wanted to know enough chords to be able to write a song. That's all. I never had the patience to learn or the desire to be a lead guitar player or a music theory major or anything like that. And, you know, so having Mackin in the band and the ability to write those things is incredible. And it's one of my favorite parts of the process is that towards the end, on the last couple of days, when the string players come in and you hear the notes that he's been, mad scientist in the back room working on for weeks, and then you hear it come to life. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then with Sean O'Donnell, you worked on a side project together during the hiatus. And didn't some of the ideas that you and O'Donnell covered during the time off, didn't some of those eventually translate to songs on When You're Thinking?
Yeah, I think 2.5 of them did. Hang You Up is the single that we're kind of working right now. And that song is really special for me because it was written before Sean and I started working together, before the record, before everything. We split in April, I think, of 2008, and I probably wrote that song in June of that year. And that's the only song in the whole time that I wrote by myself. Almost all the words are the same. It's changed. Some things have changed. The arrangement has changed a little. The chord structure has changed. But at the core of it, it's the only song I wrote for myself, by myself, after we broke. And then Sean O'Donnell and I started working together 2 or 3 months after that. So to see that song go that far, to be something I wrote in my little office studio in Athens, Georgia, and then live with it for 3 years, and then it go on the record, and then it be a single, it's just awesome. And so that made the record. Another track called Hide, which we did a really mellow piano acoustic guitar version of it for Big If, which was the project we were calling it. And Neil came in and was like, well, why don't we try it this way and kind of punk it up a little, and we did, and I think it came out great. And then a lot of the melody and the chorus of Be the Young, which is the last song on the record, was another song that we had, and we just, the chorus was something we just knew we had to use because it just sounded like just such a massive anthem for the world,
Yeah.
So we reworked the lyrics and the rest of the music to the other song we had, and it came out amazing. So, and then we have another song called Empty Street that we have the drums recorded for. We haven't done the rest, but we're hoping to release it as a B-side at some point.
And over the years, and I guess dating back to the 2 albums that Yellowcard released before you joined the band, Yellowcard has worked with several labels throughout the history of the band. What effect does that have on the writing, either album by album or just in general? Like, do the labels ever have any influence over the writing, or is it just kind of hands off, up to you guys?
Well, right now it's extremely hands off. I mean, on an independent label, it's they really don't have any involvement in that part of the process. Or at least in our experience, they haven't. For me, it's been awesome because I've learned so much about the business. I mean, I hate the business part of what we do, but I know it pretty well now, and I know when things are good and when things are not good. But we were really, really lucky with our major label experience early on. What happened at the end was sort of out of everyone's control. It was huge corporate mergers and things that caused the company to have to change so much and not be able to spend money on records and things like that. But early on, I mean, the team at Capitol for Ocean Avenue was so amazing and so passionate about the band, and we never had the feeling, and they were trying to make a buck, but it never felt like that, It was always super creative, and the band was so hands-on with the video department and the marketing of the record and all the cool stuff we did for the street team and the fans and stuff. It was awesome, and I think the biggest comment we ever got from the label on as far as songwriting was on Lights and Sounds. I think that they kind of came in and said we need a couple more like fast songs. Mm-hmm. That's not really good.
Yeah.
That's not the man coming in. Yeah. I don't hear a single. That never happened. That's never happened to us. And that's also another kind of point of pride for us. I feel like we've always been able to deliver a record that stands on its own and we created. And funny story on this new record, actually, for the first time ever, we reached out to like co-writers for one chorus of one song because we were out of time, out of money, out of days, and it wasn't done, but the song was great, and we had to find a chorus for the song, and I just did not have it. I couldn't get it. And so we reached out to some writers in LA, and the night before the first submission came in from a writer, I got back to the apartment in LA where we were all staying, and it just came to me in my head, which is a rare thing for me, but I felt like I had it. It was really late, everyone was asleep, and I couldn't play it because I would have woken everyone up. So I went to bed and hoped for the best. And I woke up the next morning and I still had the whole thing in my head. And I got the guitar immediately and I played it and it worked. And I got to the studio and I was like, Neil, God, let's do it right now. I'm warming up. Let's go. And so I went in and Neil worked with me on the melody a little bit and sang it, and it became the chorus for With You Around, which is one of my favorite songs on the record. And we got, later that night, we got an email with a submission from a huge, huge songwriter that we reached out to. And it was cool to have someone that big want to work with the band, but it was also really nice to be able to say, like, thank you so much for helping, but we did it, And, that's, so we just never had anybody come in and say, or do any kind of real major label, crap that you hear about. Which was awesome for us. And now, being on the independent label, I don't really feel that much of a difference. We're still doing all kinds of great press. We had a video on MTV.com that I think is still in the top 10 a month later in most viewed videos. It's insane, and that's all. It doesn't feel any different to me. And a part of that is because I think the band is a lot more mature, and we know what we need to do, as well as the label is doing a great job.
So, with the switch to Hopeless, that occurred after the writing was done for the album, but before the studio work? Is that?
It was sort of in the middle of all of it.
In the middle?
Yeah, we had already started writing, and we signed over the summer.
Is that just how that happened, or were you guys trying to put off the decision on picking a new record label until after or near the end of the writing? Is that something? Is it just how it happened, or was that intentional?
We were reaching out to labels shortly after we had to sit down. And a big part of that process was all 5 of us getting together and talking about all of the stuff that needed to change for each of us in order to go forward. We all had a lot of things we needed to say, and we're in a place now where we're able to say those things. We're just older. As much as I hate to say it, but we're older and wiser.
Yeah.
And so shortly after those meetings, we immediately went for, what are we going to do? Are we going to sign to a major label? Are we going to sign to an independent label? Hopeless was just the one place that was die hard. They wanted to be a part of the band so bad, and that's what you want. That's all you need. It doesn't matter major or independent. I mean, we needed a place that that had the support system for the band, because we do have a career and we have something really strong to build on. But so we couldn't just sign to any tiny little indie label. We needed something that had a force behind it. But I mean, you look at All Time Low, who we're on tour with right now. They've sold almost 1 million records on Hopeless over the course of their 3 albums, and almost every night of this tour is sold out in 2,000 or more tickets. I mean, those are the biggest shows we ever played at the height of our career, when we were selling 20,000 records a week. They're not doing that. It's all Hopeless. It's all, their whole career has been built, and that was a huge turn on for us as well, to say, well, look what they've done with this band, and the possibility of what they could do to help us rebuild and get back to doing a headlining tour like this of our own.
You have kind of described Lights and Sounds and Paper Walls, the writing process for those two, as kind of being sequential albums. And like you said, Lights and Sounds kind of came from a harder time or a different place as a band. Whereas Paper Walls, I think you said that you were just trying to approach it or write those songs, finding a new outlook on things. Can you describe that a little more, like either the sequence of those two, or just the different place that you came from to write those 2 albums?
Lights and Sounds was just a grand undertaking. It was like this, we had so much money, and the label was at our beck and call. We were the biggest U.S. band they had put out in years at Capitol. So, I mean, it's no stretch to say that we kind of got whatever we wanted at that time and wanted to take full advantage of that. And we made this grand, ambitious record. You know, that's what we set out to do. I mean, for me as the lyricist and kind of, you know, songwriter in the band, it was the time for me where I was pretty much a mess. I mean, I was definitely doing the rock and roll, drugs and drinking and living in Manhattan and spending a ton of money, and just I was a wreck. But the thing is, throughout all that, I always had a pretty heavy conscience on my shoulder, and I knew I was being an idiot. And I think that's where I really dove in on the songwriting for that record, and that's why it came out so dark. And you know, fans just didn't really identify with that darkness, because the previous record had been this bright, sunny story of 5 friends who moved to California with a dream in their pocket, you know. And Lights and Sounds is very much the story of that dream came true, and on TV it looked perfect, but it was far from perfect, you know.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be honest about it through that time, and you know, I also wanted it to be American Idiot. You know, that's what I wanted to do with, you know, with my career at that point. And Paper Walls was just we went back to basics kind of thing. But the difference in it was that it was still a record that we went into a rehearsal space for like 6 weeks, and that's where all the ideas came from, and then we went and recorded. So the difference, like I said, between that and the new record was that the new record was a process over the whole year. We were really able to focus our ideas and look at it as both the band who wants to be passionate about everything we're putting on the record, but also as a fan. And what are you going to feel and experience when you listen to this record? And that was important to us, because we need to go out right now and have our fans be excited about what we're doing. You know, so the sound of the record and every song and every choice for every part was with them in mind as well.
We just put out a new record. It's called When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes. We're going to play you a couple songs from our new record right now. This one's called Hang You Up. You were alive inside and song in my head. I tried